Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's board meeting. We will now return to our regular session, Ms. Contra, at 5:59 p.m. All right, opening exercises. Dr. Sorensen, would you mind leading us? The pledge in our moment of silence, please.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on to section 5.1, address agenda and consider adoption or recommend changes. Board members, any changes you'd like to make to this evening's agenda? Ms. Hill.
No, thank you.
Dr. Sorensen.
No, sir.
Ms. Rooks.
No, thank you.
Ms. Ewan.
No, thank you.
I don't have any changes either. With that said, I do need a motion to approve this evening's agenda, including the consent agenda.
I motion that we approve tonight's agenda, including the consent agenda.
I will second.
It's contrary to a motion made by Ms. Rooks and a second by Mrs. Hill. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to section 6.1, recognitions. Ms. Ari?
President Sandoval, members of the board, none this evening.
All right, thank you. All right, board comments, 6.2, Ms. Hill.
Yes, I just again want to reiterate what our school motto is, which is every student, every day, except for the girls. I will continue to state my stance on the fact that we do need to have a separation of biological boys from the biological girls in their formative restrooms. So I will continue to speak about that specifically, that we are not actually addressing and catering to every single student in our district. Also, I would like to take this time to speak some words of wisdom. Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me and keep all my commands always, so that it might go well with them and their children forever. Deuteronomy 5:29.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Dr. Sorensen.
No, sir.
All right. Mrs. Rooks.
Ephesians 6:13, therefore put on every piece of God's armor so that you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle, you will be standing firm. I wanted to congratulate all the students that graduated high school and all their families. I wanted to say thank you to President David Sandoval. We were both at the Liberty High School graduation, and you offered to let me hand out diplomas to some of the students. So I really appreciate that opportunity to experience that incredible moment of giving those diplomas to the kids. And I want to say thank you to Mrs. Bennett from Vistancia Elementary. She let me also participate in the 8th grade graduation. It was pretty exciting to do that as well. And Sunrise Mountain High School, that was pretty surreal experience to be there, to pass out. I got to pass out one diploma to a family member. So that was pretty cool to see my high school being able to be there to participate in their graduation. I also wanted to say thank you to Peoria Flex Academy, the principal and all the staff for allowing me to attend their graduation as well. And I also have to agree with the sentiment that we are not addressing this situation for upcoming school year, and that it seems to be every student every day except for the girls.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to all of the staff and teachers who have been back at work and reviewing the data, student achievement and growth over the years, and looking forward to how can we improve those scores more and so forth. So I really appreciate all the work and their commitment to our students and student achievement that they are working on now. I do want it noted that this board has been given notification that it is not okay to be, that there is separation of church and state, and it's been given to the advice has been given to all the board that we are not supposed to be reading verses. So I just do want it noted that at least I do recognize that that is not allowed. So I want to just make sure that that is mentioned. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ewing. Yeah, I'm going to just echo some of the same around graduation. You know, it's always an honor being up there and celebrating the successes of our students, which really is a reflection of not only our families, but our teachers and staff. You know, what you do every day to make sure that our students are prepared to navigate their own path in a confident and adaptable way. So thank you for that. I mean, you know, when we have another record year of scholarships awarded to our high school seniors, at $78 million with 7 high schools, that is something to be very proud of. So thank you again for that. Lastly, I visited we have a resource center at El Toloma that is officed by our McKinney-Vento liaison. And McKinney-Vento are our homeless students. And when we took a look at some of the data, you know, as we continue to meet students where they're at and really understand, you know, what resources, you know, our students need, he is doing a fantastic job of understanding that and making sure that our foster students, our McKinney-Vento students, you know, have the resources that they need to be successful in the classroom. And the numbers have grown exponentially from year to year. So I applaud him for continuing to just be steadfast and passionate, you know, about making sure that, you know, all our students are successful, and namely in this case, our foster and our homeless students. So thank you to him. Just wanted to give him a quick shout out. All right, that said, superintendent comments. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Sandoval, Governing Board, Cabinet, and guests. During our last week of classes, Heritage Elementary School received a visit from Maricopa County Superintendent Steve Watson. Superintendent Watson was able to work alongside our students as they gained familiarity with microbits, which are pocket-sized computers used for gaining hands-on experience with coding and computer programming. We thank Superintendent Watson for spending time with our students and getting to see the innovative use of technology in our classrooms. And we have some really great news to celebrate this evening. I want to congratulate our communications and public relations team as they earned a gold medallion award from the National School Public Relations Association for their 2021-22 kindergarten enrollment campaign. To be deemed worthy of a gold medallion, a nomination must include a comprehensive data-driven write-up. The Gold Medallion Award is the highest recognition a school public relations team can receive, and it is truly highly competitive. Peoria Unified is proud to be recognized nationally for this outstanding achievement. So, Ms. Airy, would you please pass along our congratulations to you and your team. Thank you for your hard work. That
All right.
concludes my comments, sorry.
No worries. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to section 7, public comment. Request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. As always, our public rules of conduct. The board president shall keep control of the meeting and require the speakers and the audience to refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or members of the public are not allowed. It is inappropriate to utilize a public hearing, the public comment segment, or any other agenda items for the purpose of making political speeches. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease such conduct upon request of the presiding officer will be grounds for ending a speaker's time at the podium or for the removal of any disruptive person from the meeting room at the direction of the board president. That said, we will spend 30 minutes on this segment, on this line item, 3 minutes per individual. First public comment comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board. My name is Trina Berg. I'm a teacher and parent in this district. I wanted to just come and, Dr. Davidson's not here, but I wanted to thank him for his years of service in this district and for the chance to work with him for as long as I've been able to work with him. And Dr. Reynolds, same to you. Thank you very much for all your years of service in this district. It has been a very rough time since you came, since you started right when COVID hit as well. I appreciate both of you and everything that you've done to help this district, and I'm going to miss working with both of you very much, and I'm not at all jealous that you get to retire, but I hope you enjoy your retirement. And Dr. Davidson, wherever you are right now, I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors to become a superintendent. In addition to that, I just want to thank every one of our staff members who is choosing to teach summer school. I have a lot of respect for the teachers who can just keep on going and teach summer school. I can honestly say I can't do it. I'm too tired. So thank you to all the staff that are doing that from early elementary all the way through high school for our credit recovery students. Thank you very much for your ability to do that and your willingness to do that and to use your summer to have that second job, which is really truly just a second job again. I also want to say Happy Pride Month. It is June, so thank you very much. And I'm asking that we stop saying this new student every day except for the girls, because really what you're saying in that case is every student every day except for our trans students or except for our gay kids or except for this or except for that. And when does it stop? We need to follow the laws. Everyone knows this. The laws have already been set. Stop it, knock it off. We need to stop saying that because what you're trying to say is not happening the way you're saying it. We should be embracing all of our students. Our students make our district what it is. And we need to embrace the diversity that we have in our district and accept the fact that we have students from every walk of life. And stop trying to segregate a certain population of students. That issue has been dealt with, it's been voted on, and really honestly, we need to move on. We have things that this district needs to do. We have a retention issue with teachers. We have retention issue with staff. We have all these other issues we need to deal with. We have crumbling old buildings, and thank you to the state for supplying extra money this year. That was really truly unexpected that we were able to actually move forward and work on some of these capital items. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Jody Brackett. Welcome.
Yes. And yes, we are going to still continue until you get a policy for the bathroom. Again, except for Heather Rooks and Rebecca Hill. The people of Arizona, the community, are still speaking and requesting and demanding, actually, that you put a bathroom policy in. And you're going to keep on getting served until you get it put in. So you are served.
You're going to hand it to Ms. Contra, Ms. Brackett. Thank you. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Jeannie Castine.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, members of cabinet. I hope that you're able to enjoy your retirement, and thank you so much for your service, Dr. Reynolds. Happy Pride Month to everybody who celebrates, and happy Indictment Day for all who celebrate. Again, my name is Jeannie Castine, and I'm here to speak on behalf of folks who are not evangelical Christians. As someone who was raised by parents who allowed me to make my own decisions about religion, I struggled to understand all the hate and the fear that evangelical Christians seem to espouse in the name of God. In my professional role, many we call them ex-evangelicals, have shared their stories of verbal, emotional, physical, financial, and sexual abuse with me that they've suffered in their religious organizations or with their evangelical extremist families. Check out Shiny Happy People if you haven't already, because that is a story that needs to be told over and over again. This is why members of our organization are so passionate and so supportive of the work that we do, promoting the separation of church and state and protecting the Constitution. Their stories of trauma at the hands of religious leaders and evangelical relatives are horrendous. And so again, I'd like to remind members that when you quote scripture, you are likely traumatizing or re-traumatizing some of your own constituents, as well as violating your oath to the Constitution. When board members cite scripture that calls for the extermination of all non-Christians, you hurt everyone in the district and in your community, and you show why the Establishment Clause is so important. I'm happy to share scripture at every board meeting going forward. I've got some good ones. But really, I'd rather y'all be inclusive and compassionate instead of exclusionary and mean-spirited. In fact, I got some scripture right here. These are the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. 1 should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. By the way, I'm not a Satanist, but I'm just exposing how ridiculous this is. 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. You'll probably like that one. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forgo one's own. 5, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world, which is hard for some of you. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. 6, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. And 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought.
Thank you,
The
Ms.
spirit
Castine,
of
for your
compassion,
time.
wisdom, and justice
Castine.
should always prevail over the written or
for your
spoken
time.
word. Thank you.
All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Tiffany Benson.
PUSD community members. So we have secularists who are grossly misinforming the public, and I want to clear this up. I have copies of the U.S. Constitution for each board member, and I have extras for those who don't know their rights and want to inform themselves. The First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right for people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Article 6 says the Constitution is pretty much the prevailing law of this land. The phrase separation of church and state doesn't appear in any of our founding documents. It's in a letter that Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Association responding to their fears of a state-sanctioned religion. The First Amendment right was not granted for practicing religion privately, but for publicly exercising one's sincerely held beliefs without the threat of legal repercussions, imprisonment, or death. I find it interesting that silly people that are trying to sue Hill and Rooks are also publicly practicing sincerely held beliefs of secular humanism. But maybe they don't know that this is also a religion in the United States with full First Amendment protections. So, board members Hill and Rooks have broken no laws by reading scripture. They aren't proselytizing anyone. They're not sanctioning a state religion. We're all free to exercise First Amendment rights, including those with dumb anti-science ideas like gender fluidity. But I'll tell you what these two board members have done. They have triggered the anti-God, anti-Christian, prejudiced, heterophobic target moms, Bud Light dads, and Disney district employees who are obsessed with sexualizing children. Sandoval, Sorensen, and Ewing should resign for aiding and abetting this cause. These three lack the courage, conviction, and common sense to act with decency towards PUSD students and families. I encourage Hill and Rooks to stand strong, and I'll end with a verse that says, "Only fools say in their heart there is no God. These are corrupt, their actions are evil, and not one of them does any good." That is Psalm 14:1.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. Dr. Sorensen, Ms. Ewing, names were mentioned. Up to you to. Nope. Ewing? Okay. Thank you. All right. Next public comment comes from Ms. Darla Kissling.
I'm Darla Kissling. Thank you, President Sandoval and members and Superintendent. Wow, how to follow up with that. I've been thinking all day today what to say when I came here. I thought about writing it down. I'm like, no, that's too scripted. I just wanted to be moved with the feeling of the room. I have seen in the past few days words like Christian terrorists. We have hateful speech. I'm not coming with hateful speech. I am a Christian. I'm definitely not a terrorist. And I'm just here to support the many girls I have heard speak about not feeling safe in the bathroom. And I know you voted on it, and there's not much to do about it, but I want to keep the pressure on. I want to hold the line with these girls. I want to be a voice for these girls. I'm a grandma. I struggle for the parents that are dealing with this. I would pull my children out. I couldn't go with this. I hear there's boys' bathroom, girls' bathrooms, and then we talk about the trans students. We are not calling them boys or girls. We're calling them trans students. Please give them their own bathroom. It is not fair for them to have to be in the boys' bathroom if they don't feel comfortable. Totally, I get it. It's not fair for the girls either. That's all I have to say. I just really want you to listen to the girls. Girls don't get to be listened to sometimes. And I also want to say I grew up in a very loving, Christ-centered church. Never once did I feel I was forced to do anything. I felt the love of God. I feel the love for God's creation. And I'm just here to speak out for that. I find offense that there are words that talk about, well, against what I'm saying. So anyway, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Kissling. Appreciate that. Next public comment comes from Elijah Watson.
Thank you, President Sandoval, Dr. Reynolds, members of the board. My name is Elijah Watson. I'm an advocate for equitable education working across Arizona. You know the deal. Before I get into my little spiel, I did want to address one of the previous comments, which was about the constitutionality of the separation of church and state. I'm not sure if the speaker has read the Constitution, but there is a thing called the Establishment Clause. And not only is there a thing called the Establishment Clause, but in Arizona, we also have open meeting law. And those are the violations that occur when you spout Bible verses at a school district governing board meeting. However, I think it's very important to reiterate some of my comments from last week's special meeting, which is that we cannot allow for these board meetings to stand as a platform for the ignorant and deceitful comments made behind the dais from both Board Member Hill and Board Member Rooks, that this district, quote, cares for every student every day with the exception of the girls. Because we know that this is simply not true. These board meetings should also not stand as a political platform for either Board Member Rooks or Board Member Hill to voice that any of the other board members on this board don't care about the students of this district, because we know that is also simply not true. But here's what is true. Both Board Member Hill and Board Member Rooks have made it very, very clear that they don't seek to uphold the district mission statement of supporting every student every day, because they've told us again and again, point blank, that they're going to vote against every single action they can and make every action that this board considers about their failed prejudicial bathroom ban proposal and other anti-LGBTQ+ policies that they can't get passed in this district, because they know that this board knows that these policies are only going to, one, target extremely vulnerable students who are more prone to have suicidal ideation in their teenage years, and two, cause this district to go bankrupt because of the number of lawsuits that will come this district's way if these policies are enacted. So, to simply conclude, if you're going to make these board meetings a playground to spread your transphobic rhetoric, just do us all a favor. Resign. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Next public comment comes from Ms. Leanne Roberts.
Good evening, President Sandoval, Dr. Reynolds, and members of the board. I would like to first thank President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, Dr. Sorensen for continually showing integrity and ethics at our governing board meetings, even in the face of rancor and disrespect by the remaining board members. When you are up for re-election, please run. You have more support than you could possibly imagine. Speaking of integrity, I would like to read from the board policy that has been ignored by both Ms. Rooks and Mrs. Hill. I'm not sure if the two of you purposefully ignore it or if it's just ignorance. I figured if I read it, maybe you will follow some of the board policy. First is BCA, Board Member Ethics. As a member of PUSD Governing Board, I will strive to represent everyone in the Peoria District and not a particular interest group or geographical area. 2, understand that my job is to see that the school district is well managed, not manage the school district. Number 3, treat each other with staff with respect. Respect and support the majority decisions of the board. I'm going to repeat that one. Respect and support the majority decisions of the board. Now, policy BBA, board powers and responsibilities. The duties and obligation of an individual board member include the following: to become familiar with state school laws, regulations of the State Department of Education, district policies, rules, and regulations. To work harmoniously with other board members without neglecting a proper share of the work or trying to dominate the board. To accept the responsibility for confidentiality in appropriate matters, especially those dealing with personnel and divulging of privileged information that could cost the district money, support, or public confidence. And to represent the board and district in a manner that promotes both interest and support. And to accept, respect, and support the will of the majority vote in all cases. I'm going to repeat that one. To accept, respect, and support the will of the majority vote in all cases. I didn't read every section from policies BCA and BBA. Only some sections that have been disregarded by both Ms. Hill and Ms. Rooks in at least one previous board meeting. Mrs. Hill and Mrs. Rooks, if you can't bring yourself to abide by board policy or support PUSD, maybe you ought to resign, or maybe a recall is in order.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Ms. Hill, Ms. Rooks, any comment?
Yeah, I'll address that. I do support every single student in this district. That's why at every single board meeting, I mentioned that we are excluding the girls. I don't know how that can be made any more clear. We are excluding the girls. We're demoting them from just being a general part of the population of our district. They have worth. They have the right to be in a bathroom, a restroom, a locker room without having to worry about a boy coming in and taking a video of her, of groping her. Predators will use this non-policy to take advantage of girls. That's an absolute fact. That's a fact. It's happened. Look it up. I don't know what else to say. I do support every single student. I'm not transphobic. I don't have any problem with the trans population. I just think they need to use either the nurse's restroom, the administration's restroom, or the male restroom biologically. Nope, I'm speaking.
Roberts?
I'm sorry.
Ms.
I'm
Roberts?
speaking. I'm speaking. I support every single student in this district. That's why this breaks my heart so much, because girls are not being given worth. That's it.
So, thank you. Yep.
President Samuel, just to be clear, we want to respond to criticism but not get too far.
Yeah,
into
agreed.
the
Right.
topic. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the main thing is that we had a young girl at a board meeting crying in tears because she's afraid for boys to go into their bathroom. So that is why I do say every student, every day, except for the girls, because that girl stood there and cried because we weren't being responsible adults and coming up with a policy to protect all students.
All right, next public comment. Thank you, Ms. Rooks. Comes from Corrine Haynes. Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Benjamin Lorby. Three minutes.
Howdy, all. Miss Ewing, several weeks ago, in a vote to allow trans students to use whatever bathroom they wish, you assured us that these policies were perfectly safe, as neither yourself nor law enforcement could provide a single example of any trans student assaulting any girl in any bathroom, in any school, in any state, anywhere at all, in fact. But not to worry, since you couldn't locate them, I took the trouble too. See, Loudoun County, Virginia, where last year, under district policy, a trans student was allowed into the women's bathroom where he assaulted a girl. To cover it up, they moved him to another school where he did it again. See, Irvine, California last month, where a trans student entered the women's locker room and flashed the girls there. When they confronted him, he mercilessly beat them. This happened again in Gwinnett County, Georgia. This happened again in Oklahoma City. This happened again in Ohio, where a trans man was allowed to use the locker room where he was arrested for flashing little girls. The judge dropped the charges after he ruled that this man was too fat for them to see anything. Last month, in this city, a man using they-them pronouns in a scene straight out of Silence of the Lambs hunted down and killed a female jogger because he, quote, wanted to look just like her. And before you say that these are anecdotal evidence, just note that in a survey of trans inmates in federal prisons, half were convicted of sexual assault and 90% were convicted of violent crimes, well above the general prison population. Now, it should also be noted that in each of these cases, each of these perpetrators had either changed their pronouns, had undergone transition, or had received gender-affirming therapy and accommodations thereof. Why is this important to note? Probably for the same reason we recognize as a society that you do not affirm that people with anorexia can be healthy in any way. You do not affirm that somebody with schizophrenia is hearing voices. And you do not affirm that somebody in a manic episode is having great ideas. Because when you leave somebody to languish in their false mental state, i.e. men who think they are women, they will inevitably lash out and harm themselves and those around them. Hurt people hurt other people. But I don't want to pretend and have the hubris to think that I'm going to be the one to change your mind. I'm happy to share any and all of these examples with you, but you will most likely leave here tonight believing that men can become women, affirming care works, and that you made the right vote. But you will no longer be able to look into the eyes of your constituents and honestly say that you are unaware of the assaults that inevitably take place when we declare to women, you have no right to privacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lorby. Ms. Ewing.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing all of those cases to my attention. And yes, I was aware of those as I got lots of emails after that meeting. However, what I was referencing was by the U.S. government in all of their research. So that's what I was referencing. And yes, I see you're holding that up. However, the vote, how I based my vote wasn't just solely on that. How I based my vote is what we are required to do when making policy is that we must make policy that is within federal, state, and within our policies. So federal laws and state laws. And based upon the laws that are out there, my vote was not to go forward with that because a policy would have been against a law. And that is the reason why I voted that way. Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Ewing, thank you. All right, we have one more public comment, and that comes from Ms. Christina Rogers.
Good evening. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Continue to fight, ladies. Continue to fight for our girls. Continue to fight for our Lord, because those matter. And freedom of speech, I was going to say the same thing about the First Amendment, but a few people have already said that. The other thing that is concerning is that sometimes, even though the lawyer did not say it was law in Arizona, just FYI. And then the other thing is even if it was true, sometimes you still have to protect the innocent. And girls right now are the innocent. Sports are being taken away from them. Bathrooms are being taken away from them. These men that are coming in and saying they feel like a woman, how would they know? They're not a woman. They can never feel like a woman. That is impossible. Just like I would never go to say that I feel like a man, even if I wanted to dress like a man, if I wanted to dress like a girl, whatever it is, that is crazy. I'm just so sick of the bathroom stuff. I really hope that you guys do look. I do thank you for looking in and talking to them back, trying to figure out a way to help keep our girls safe and the trans community safe as well. Because they're not safe in our girls' bathrooms because there's hateful speech on the girls' bathroom for these trans kids. The boys don't want them either. So this tiny percent of people can go to the nurse's office or the administrative office. It's not being rude. It's not being hateful. It's being considerate to all, period. The bathrooms are not a hangout place, so it's not like they should be going in there and hanging out, taking pictures. It's there for them to use the restroom. Period. So they can use the restroom in a nurse's office or administrative office. It seems the most cost-effective and safe for everyone. The other thing that I wanted to bring up as well, as a parent, it is concerning, and I'm just going to read this just so people are aware of the welcoming packets that are going through schools right now. But the school is actually asking for authorization and permission to release educational, medical, and psychological records of kids. That is completely inappropriate, and it's none of your business. If you want the educational stuff, totally fine from other schools. But to request parents to sign a form for their kids to go to school and asking them to release their medical information, psychological information, that is not the school's responsibility. That is a medical professional's responsibility. That is the parents' responsibility. It is not the school's. I am begging you to get back to teaching our children education, period. That's our job. Nothing else. That is what you are here to do. So I implore the teachers, the board, to get back to the basics and teach our children, stay out of their gender fluid education.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. All right, that concludes this evening's call to the public. We are now moving on to and no items were removed from consent, so now we're moving to action items, section 10. 10.1, consideration to appoint acting superintendent. Ms. Fesley, welcome.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board.
This agenda item allows you, the governing board, to have discussions and hopefully make a motion to name an acting superintendent until the selection process of an interim superintendent is completed. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you, President Sandoval, members of the board, to move forward with your motion.
All right, thank you. Board members, questions, comments on this line item? Ms. Hill? No. Dr. Sorensen? Yeah. Ms. Ricks? Ms. Ewing? Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any questions, comments either. I mean, it's for me, as we look to this next chapter, if you will, it is important to afford continuity throughout the district, and be very intentional and mindful of who this person is sitting in this seat, as we go through a process of selecting our new superintendent. So, after many discussions, and I do move that we certainly select Mr. Kevin Molino as or appoint him as our acting superintendent as we go through the process of finding our new superintendent.
I will second.
Ms. Concho, we have a motion made by myself, a second by Ms. Hill. Oh, Dr.
Effective July 1.
Effective July 1, yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave that open. You caught me. Ms. Concho, there was a motion made by myself and a second by Ms. Hill. Board members, please cast your votes. And motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Ms. Vesely, thank you. All right, moving on to 10.2, consideration of administrative appointment, Chief Student Services Officer. Ms. Vesely.
Well, good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the board. It is my pleasure to bring forth a recommendation tonight for the Chief Student Services Officer position. Tonight, we are recommending that Mr. Jason Nuttall be appointed to this position effective the 2023-2024 school year. Mr. Nuttall started his career here in Peoria Unified as a special education teacher back in 2002, and he served as the department chair and also head baseball coach at Centennial High School. He also served at Kachina. Mr. Nuttall then joined Tolleson Union High School District and served as an assistant principal athletic director until 2014. From 2014 to 2016, Mr. Nuttall served Washington Elementary School District as an assistant principal, where he served again as an administrator over a middle school. Mr. Nuttall has experience working as a director of compliance with Student Choice High School from 2016 to 2018. And for the last 5 years, Mr. Nuttall has been an assistant superintendent of support services with the Liberty Elementary School District. During his tenure in Liberty Elementary School District, he has experience in the following: the development and implementation of the district strategic plan, supervision over food services, transportation, grounds, maintenance, custodial, and even human resources. He's worked to implement effective, valid, and reliable evaluations that contribute to student achievement, and has supported the district through boundary adjustments, as well as leading the district through 2 new school construction projects. His vast experiences make Mr. Nuttall a top-notch candidate for Peoria Unified School District. Mr. Nuttall earned both his bachelor's degree in elementary education with a specialization in special education from Northern Arizona University. He has also earned his master's degree in educational leadership from Northern Arizona University. His skills and expertise in multiple areas of district leadership were recognized amongst the interview committees. He will be bringing a wealth of knowledge here to Peoria Unified that can only enhance our district. We are fortunate to have Mr. Jason Nuttall rejoining Peoria Unified School District, and we look forward to him serving our district as the next Chief Student Services Officer, effective July 1, 2023. So with that, I open it up for any questions and look for your appointment and recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Vesely. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill? Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Ms. Ricks? Ms. Ewing?
I just want to say I'm really excited about this nomination and excited to have him on board, so thank you.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, it's his vast experience and institutional knowledge and, what he's done for many years to just, lift up our youth is important to have that mindset and that heart, sitting in this very important seat. So that said, with no further questions or comments, I do need a motion to approve the administrative appointment for the Chief Student Services Officer position as presented.
I motion that we approve the consideration of administrative appointment, Chief Student Services Officer as presented.
I'll second that. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Ewing. Good. Ms. Kocher, we have a motion made by Mrs. Rooks and a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members, and congratulations to Mr. Nuttall.
President Sandoval, members of the board, we do have Mr. Nuttall here, and I'd like to bring him up just for a minute so that he may introduce himself to you.
Absolutely. I apologize. I didn't realize you were in the room.
Here I am. I don't think you're going to be able to get rid of me that easily. So thank you, President Sandoval, governing board members, Dr. Reynolds. I just wanted to take just a moment to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to return once again to the district that not only gave me my first shot in education to teach and lead, but it's also been a really special place for my children. I was calculating 33 aggregate years for 3 boys with 6 to go. And so that investment has really hit home for my family. I'd also like to thank the committee. It's important to recognize the rigor and the exemplary standards that this district sets forth for the recruitment of leaders. It was not an easy process. It was mentally exhausting, and I'm grateful for that opportunity to have participated in that. My wife, Rochelle, here is with me this evening. If you define better half, that's it. She was the 2023 recipient of the Pride of Peoria Award, so she's been recognized, but I'm recognizing her again publicly this evening. Finally, just honored to serve once again alongside so many wonderful people in this district who are passionate about ensuring one thing of many that stuck out to me in the strategic plan, and I'm going to quote, that every student is known, valued, cared for, and challenged. And I appreciate the opportunity to join this wonderful team and rejoin this district again with the hopes of finishing my career where it started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nuttall. Any questions, comments from Mr. Nuttall? So, I'm going to bring you back up, sir. No worries.
Well, congratulations and welcome back. It's really nice to have you back in the fold. It sounds like you have a lot of experience and expertise in various areas. It sounds like you're kind of a jack of all trades. We can use you all over the place. We'll just, call on you for everything. So we're very excited to have you on board and to get to know you better and to see what the future brings. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Dr. Sorensen?
Yeah, congratulations. Obviously a huge job, especially with the transition we're going through as a district. And I know you're coming from a district where some interesting things are happening and some interesting things are happening here too. So we'll lend on your expertise. And I also have a bias towards coaches. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Ricks?
Yes, congratulations. Welcome back. I graduated Sunrise Mountain High School too, so it's cool to see people come back to Peoria Unified. And I guess my only question is, what achievement goals do you think that you want to achieve, I guess, for Peoria? Or what goals and visions do you have?
How much time do we have?
I mean, you can email it to us, but I just was Yeah, because you seem very, very involved in every aspect.
I
So.
certainly am, and I'm honored to be a part of a great team. Certainly understand full well big shoes to fill in multiple spots. I think my goal is to fit right in and continue to press and challenge and respond appropriately to the needs of our students to ultimately achieve student achievement. That's why we're here. We all have jobs because of kids, and I share in that sentiment with so many wonderful people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing?
Welcome. I'm very excited. I do appreciate that you recognized the committee, that they went through all of the hard work and the challenge that they do make it for each applicant. So I appreciate that you recognize that. And I think that's one of the great things about our district is that we do have so many voices at the table deciding our leaders. So anyway, I appreciate that you recognize that and look forward to having you on. And I can't wait to hear about all the great things that are going to happen with this district because of your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Dr. Reynolds?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for accepting this challenge. Thank you for joining this family, this team. Thank you to your family for accepting that as well. We know as educators that we accept it as a family. Given the hours and the effort that goes into these jobs. So I just, again, want to say thank you. You are joining an absolutely incredible team. And I think it'll be in short time where you realize that and agree with it. And I'm just sad that you and I won't be able to work together. So, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Reynolds. Yeah, I'm going to echo, all the sentiments that were just expressed, but I want to add something you said and a comment that was made earlier by one of our called the public speakers just around we are a very diverse district without question. Every one of our students has a story, every site has a story, and I talked earlier about our McGinney-Vento and foster liaison and how that is just not becoming but has always been a really important role of the district. But the intentionality of all of the associates that we have across this district to, grow our students, ensure that they're achieving academically, ensure that they're confident again and adaptable as they leave our walls and create and follow their own path. So, just looking forward to you being very engaged, and we're a large district, and visiting, with schools, as you sit in the seat to onboard, really listening to understand. And, it's changed a little, since you were here last, but just grateful for your ear and your willingness to dig in and like I said earlier, listen to understand. So congratulations again, Ms. Nettle. Congratulations to you, and, just welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, moving on to 10.3, fiscal year 2024 budget update and additional employee compensation recommendations. Ms. Myers, welcome. And we do have one public comment tied to this line item, so we'll allow you to present. We'll listen to public comments, and then we'll get into board members' comments and questions.
Well, thank you very much. And good evening, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, and Dr. Reynolds. Thank you for the opportunity to provide additional information regarding the fiscal year 2024 expenditure budget and staff compensation. Tonight's presentation is a follow-up to the presentation and board action that took place on May 11th. And tonight I will provide additional information regarding additional funding that the district is now scheduled to receive in fiscal year 2024, information regarding the district's budget process, and additional compensation recommendations that are being brought forward for next year. I have previously shared that the district's budget development process is a multi-month process. It's approximately 7+ months each year. This year we started in October. And of course, through that process, we've shared along the way that we do calculate projections related to funding, as well as fixed and variable expenditures are forecasted for the new fiscal year. Also, our process involves employee stakeholders. We've shared before, we have a budget team, 30-plus employees from various work groups, employee classifications of certified, classified staff, and administrative employee groups provide input on compensation and recommendations that we bring forward to the governing board regarding stipends, compensation increases, positions, staffing modifications, and benefit renewal each year. So again, there's a collaborative process with our compensation recommendations. We shared also on May 11th that the budget team had met 9 times throughout the process. You'll note a highlight on this slide that there's one more date that I'll speak to in just a moment. And of course, along the way, the meetings are facilitated by Mrs. Vesley and me. And tonight we are bringing forward an additional recommendation related to the work that the budget team did at that additional meeting. I've also shared, of course, that each year there are priorities that are a starting point for the budget team's work, and we also capture information and input through our employee chat process each year, outreach to human resources, as well as our own analysis looking at other employers and districts from a competition perspective. So all of those inputs create a list of priorities that we address as a budget team. Some are addressed in total during the year. Others may continue for several years. It's a multi-year process, and you'll note compression circle. That was a priority this year. And of course, on May 11th, there was action from the board related to banded compression for employees. And of course, and we also looked at long-term compression, return to work retiree stipends, ongoing salary increases to the base, minimum wage impacts to classified hourly compensation, transportation hourly rates, performance and merit pay, as well as school counselor compensation. So again, that's some of the work we did that's already been approved, and again, tonight there's an opportunity to consider an additional recommendation. Compensation increases, of course, should be evaluated over time to truly get a true picture of the progress that's made to date. And so you've seen this slide many times showing a multi-year summary of compensation increases over the last few years. And I'll draw your attention, and we've mentioned it before, in fiscal year 2022, there was an increase to the base that was based on longevity to address long-term compression. And with the action that was taken on May 11th, the budget team recommended having a similar approach, again, based on longevity, years of service with the district, continuous years of service. The compensation increase would be phased based on those years with the district. And so that's the action that took place, the approval on May 11th. I'm reminding you because we're going to revisit this later in the presentation with an updated recommendation. In addition to an increase to the base, there were other compensation priorities that were addressed with our fiscal year 2024 compensation recommendations that were approved by the governing board, including utilizing classroom site fund extensively for additional compensation increases for eligible staff, as well as to address banded compression and performance pay increases. The banded compression was approved was addressed through their approval of a $1,250 to $2,000 increase after the 10% increase to the classroom site fund portion of eligible employees' compensation. And we really targeted employees years 4 to 20 with the district, as we know they had been materially impacted by recent salary schedule increases that were approved not only last summer but a few years ago. And this increase, again highlighting on the slide, was for teachers function 1,000 and exempt positions function 2,100 only. In addition, other priorities that were previously approved included counselor compensation, which is highlighted on this slide, as well as additional action related to a Spanish immersion stipend, updated extra duty and summer work rates, as well as athletic high school coaching schedule structure changes. So again, a summary of the action and what was approved on May 11th. And then, of course, that same week when we had our board meeting on May 10th, prior to the meeting, the legislature did pass the $17.8 billion budget package that was signed by Governor Hobbs on May 12th, which was after our board meeting for next year. And I've shared not only in a legislative update, but a Friday report to the governing board that education related items included a $300 million one-time state aid funding payment for school districts and charters that can be used for either M&O or capital purposes. A 2.92 increase to the base level, the funding formula that is the basis of how our district and all school districts are funded. Is a consistent base support level, so no matter where a student goes to school, here in Arizona is that same level, irrespective of their property tax base. And I just want to draw the attention, so all districts, when they're running their forecasts for the new year with their budget, looked at a 2% amount for their forecasting because that was the cap in state law. So we were excited to see 2.92, that additional 0.92% coming in with the final budget that was approved, as well as an increase for transportation funding for route miles, and a 9.38% district additional assistance or capital funding increase. So that was wonderful as part of the final fiscal year 2024 State of Arizona budget. Administration has reviewed the impact of the final budget and what that means for Peoria Unified, especially the 0.92% additional inflation funding that we were not including in our initial budget projections, as well as the district's portion of the one-time $300 million payment. And for fiscal year 2024, the district is estimating that the 0.92% additional inflation funding will equate to approximately $2.2 million for M&O. The district's portion of the one-time $300 million payment is $9.5 million, one time, to the district. And we also are projecting $1.7 million of additional district additional assistance or capital funding as a result of this new budget. Due to the new funding, administration reconvened the budget team for a meeting to discuss the additional M&O funding in particular. Administration as well has evaluated the additional capital funding and looked at how that can be used for safety and or critical and priority projects that may have previously been dependent on a bond authorization, including the possibility of using some of those funds for the construction of an education building at Liberty High School. So you'll recall with our bond presentation where we highlighted the needs related to priority and essential critical projects for maintenance and upkeep, as well as some of those other categories. Again, this funding, capital funding, could be used for those purposes. The additional 0.92% inflation funding above the 2% that, again, was used for our initial budget projections provides approximately $2.2 million of additional funding. This higher amount would have been included in the budget team's earlier compensation recommendation analysis as the team met over those 9 meetings if we had known at that point in time that there would be more than the 2% inflation funding. So you can see on this slide we highlighted the $7.1 million that we were working with through our process, and with this additional funding, that amount would be in excess of 9.4. So with that, the budget team held an additional meeting on May 26th to look at options, and at that meeting, the team reviewed the funding, different options that may be available, and if there was indeed the recommendation to bring an additional compensation recommendation back to the board. During the meeting, there was a focus also on, let me jump back, it looks like I might be missing a slide. I know we had added
We have 18 slides on ours, but only 17 up here, so I think you're missing.
I wonder if we've launched the wrong presentation. It's like, I know I have an extra slide. Well, I will continue on, and with that, the slide that you have in front of you, I know our audience can't see, but I can speak to it. We have years of service at a glance. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, and so that slide is the basis for some of the conversation our budget team had regarding this additional opportunity, where you're seeing the number of employees, 0 through 5, 6 through 20, 21 plus, and how we have some long-term employees that still are impacted by what we're calling long-term compression, as well as newer employees who come on. So that population of newer employees, especially with our classified staff, is growing. And we know that those team members we want to attract and retain, but also our long-term employees who were frozen in years past. We want to ensure we're addressing that long-term compression. So that three-group band that you're seeing with the presentation, that is where we're addressing coming back and making a recommendation to modify the previous increase to the base, which was 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2, based on years of service, to now be 4 to 5%, based on years of service. So you have that on the slide, and I know the audience and people watching from home can see that. So that is the basis for the increase. And one of the main consideration points for the budget team was the discussion with addressing banded compression for those employees who've been with us from 4 to 20 years who were really impacted by those salary schedule increases. They saw a monetary increase to the classroom site fund portion of their compensation of $1,250 to $2,000. The increase between the groups of employees with that initial 3 to 3 1/2 had a 0.25% difference, 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2. So the budget team felt it was important to really, with this new funding, be able to put a little bit of a spread for our longer term employees. So you're seeing now that there's a 0.5% spread with this new recommendation, and our longest term employees, 21 years plus, would then be at the 5%. So that was the background on that additional conversation and recommendation. And so with that, we are bringing forward a recommendation to amend the compensation increase to the base that was approved on May 11th, to modify that from 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2 to now be 4, 4 1/2, 5% based on years of service. And with that, that concludes the presentation, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Again, as stated earlier, we do have a public comment tied to this line item, so we'll listen to this individual and then bring you back up. Right. Public comment tied to this line item comes from Ms. Becky Smith.
Hello. I would just like to preface with saying I don't really understand the budget or any of that, so that's probably why I have a lot of questions. But retention issues with teachers was brought up as an issue in the district, and I'm not sure how much of that is related to pay, because I was a teacher a long time ago, and I know it's still an issue today that teachers feel like they're not paid what they're worth. But it seems to me in poor taste to increase administrator pay when so many of them are well into 6 figures already, when teachers are underpaid, and we've had bus drivers come in here, and I think they were making like $14 an hour, support staff, our cafeteria workers. So I don't know how it works. Maybe that's why I need clarification. But if we approve an administration increase, is that across the board, or is there a way of separating out, like, I don't know how it works with principals being administrators versus district office staff being also administrators? But I didn't know until I looked up that, we have a lot of money that goes into the position of superintendent. It's like $230 plus a year, and then they're also getting monthly car stipends and then performance pay on top of that. So I don't know what this all looks like. I just feel like we have so many staff in the school that are underpaid at the school level. So I guess clarification on if there's a way of breaking that up, or if it's just all across the board, it's all administrators get a raise. But I also, I don't know if this is related, but it's a budgeting question. I had a friend that worked in the district, and she was like, why is it that Estancia had like pretty decent carpet? I guess their carpet was pretty new. All their carpet got replaced. And she's like, she worked at Zuni. She's like, the carpet is horrible there. So I just don't know how that works. Also, how one school who their carpet seems to be in decent condition is replacing carpet and spending money on that, while other schools are in deplorable condition and their carpet's not replaced. So I don't know. Somebody told me it was based on the principal. I don't know if as a district, like, that can be prioritized. Like, why is one school getting carpet replaced while another is in horrible condition? I just wanted to say although the motto of Peoria is great, it is a utopian motto. We can't meet the needs of every student every day. I would love it. It would be amazing, but it's impossible. It's impossible to do that. I feel like maybe the motto should be more based around academics and meeting, striving to be the best academically or something. But everyone's always going to have an opinion, and everyone's always going to not like something, and somebody else will not like something. I'm not a fan of the saying love is love, because I think that encompasses pedophilia, and I will never condone that. So it just depends on, I guess, what you think. But I don't know that the motto is really attainable. You can't meet the needs of every student every day. I would love to, but it's impossible.
Ms. Smith, I'm going to ask you to circle back to the budget if.
Yeah, I was done.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, Ms. Myers.
Thank you, President Sandoval. And if I may, just to go back for the benefit of the audience, we've launched the presentation again, and we had added, just to provide additional context, a slide which you have, but it wasn't loaded for the presentation in this boardroom. Here's what I was referring to, just for the benefit of everyone, showing the number of employees by employee group and years of service. And then again, based on that and those longest tenured employees and the long-term compression that exists, that's the basis of this recommendation. So just to bring back that conversation point for the benefit of everyone who's with us today. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
Yes, I actually just have a couple of questions for you. With regard to slide 17, so the previous slide, breaking down exactly how much of an increase the various demographics would be. I was a little surprised that the 0 to 5 years was 4%, because if we're having issues with compression, I thought it was interesting with someone who's literally coming right on board as a brand new teacher, that we would give them a 4% increase from their base rate, because we could have more differential between, the 6 to 20 and the 21 plus, and give possibly more money to, the 21 plus, because they've been there for so long. So I guess I was a little confused how close they were, with only a 0.5% difference between all of them. And the other issue that I wanted to bring up as well was administration as well. I would rather put the monies more in the hands of the teachers and the certified, the classified, than to give as much to administration. I'm not saying don't give any to administration, but I would probably make that a little bit different, because we are having issues with retention and just to retain the teachers, quality teachers and educators. I think we should put more monies there. Everybody's kind of the same, and I don't know if I would make it that way. I would probably adjust it a bit, but maybe if you could answer, those two questions as to, is there wiggle room, or why are we starting with a 4% increase for the 0 to 5 years, and the administration as well?
Okay, thank you. Well, so first I'll respond, President Sandoval, Mrs. Hill. You'll note that we have a very large population of newer employees. Also, per board policy, we cannot offer a raise to someone who has not been with the district for at least 50% of the year. So this increase does not apply to someone who's being newly hired. It would be someone who had already been with us for at least half the year. That allows us to continue to be competitive, to retain employees that we hired last year, to also ensure that we're recognizing a growing group of employees in all of our areas, especially classified. I'll note that inflation is around 4.9%, so that 4% is actually below the inflation rate right now. It was a starting point. With the budget team, we did look at a number of scenarios. There was a very thoughtful discussion as the group looked at the scenarios, which were a variety of percentages and ranges for consideration. We have representation from all of our employee groups on the budget team, so you had voices from all areas. And the consensus, the majority vote for those attending were all yay, except one person abstained because they did think another percentage might be an option. But the majority brought this recommendation forward. And then secondly, our administrative staff, we have roughly 125 administrators. The cost for compensation for our administrative team is a very small percentage in comparison to salaries and benefits from M&O as a whole. It's our certified teachers, it's our classified. You can see the numbers here, and this was a snapshot as of January 31st. So that amount's actually at 120 at that point in time. But we are struggling to not only retain, but also hire our administrative staff. All areas right now are focused on retaining and recruiting the best and the brightest. And so we want to make sure we're competitive when other districts are offering increases, that we're recognizing all of our employee groups. For a number of years, the budget team felt it was very important not to separate out groups because it takes every single employee group to ensure we're successful supporting our students.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And the 0 to 5 years, to me, I don't know, it's hard. They're new, so they're still learning the ropes. They're still, becoming a part of PUSD, and to some degree, you have to earn it. And in the general public, that's usually how it works too. So, but government's different, I know, but I don't like to make everything even. I like to make it more of an earn as you go type of a situation. But that's just my 2 cents worth. But I appreciate your input and your expertise in these areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O. Dr. Sorensen?
Yeah, I know our role is not really to manage this, right? Our role is to make sure that it's managed well. I have a question about the committee. It's interesting to see, first of all, I really appreciate the committee's emphasis and your emphasis that we moved it from 1/4% to 0.5%. In regard to adding it to the base for compression, right? Using stipends doesn't work because we know the exponential financial impact of adding that to the base, so I really appreciate that work. Something that came to mind is, do you think our committee is a representative sample of the same demographics that represent our district as a whole, as far as years of service, if that makes sense?
President Sandoval, Dr. Sorensen, we have a variety of stakeholders. Some are newer, some have been with us for many years, and be it certified classroom teacher, related service, occupational therapist, transportation, team member, food service, we have a mix. And so we do have tenured employees and we have newer team members. And we also have been very open if someone reaches out and they'd like to participate, we welcome them. That's why the team has grown in recent years. But there are many voices, tenured as well as newer employees.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So if I'm a member of PUSD staff and I email you and I say I want to be part of this committee, I can be part of that committee. It's not by invite only, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great. I think that shows that you guys are managing our money well, and we have a certain amount of money that can go out. And to hear that the majority voted on that, I know your office has won many awards regarding where our money goes and the accountability on that money. So that definitely makes me feel good that this money is going to get in the hands that we want it to. And in my opinion, investing in human capital in a massive organization is going to help you. I would agree we have a problem in education regarding quantifying how people do a good job, right? From evaluation tools to, we know merit pay doesn't work. We know it's very difficult to find any sort of valid and reliable state assessment to measure these things. So devoid of a valid and reliable system to quantify a differentiation of pay based on how they perform their job, I really feel that this committee was intentional in making the decisions they made. And as someone who knows what it takes to run a school, I don't know elementary school, but I can tell you high school administrators, high schools are cities that don't sleep. So you're rarely ever going to drive by a high school and not see a car there. And there's going to be an administrator there who's working that event, who's working the 18-hour days on a regular basis to do those things. And just mathematically, when you look at administration being 120 people out of 3,621, that's about 3% of people. So obviously the committee looked at the return on investment in not giving those administrators that same compensation to see how that dispenses out to the rest of our teachers, which is critically important. And when you look at the band of the number of teachers that we have, and really staff in general, it's usually the 0 to 5 years, right? So retaining these people is important. So I appreciate the work. I appreciate the committee's work. 9 meetings on top of their additional responsibilities is a big deal. So I appreciate the work, and thank you for this information.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Rooks?
Well, I'm just going to kind of, I guess, make comments and then ask questions. I know that the compression has been, on a lot of teachers' minds. I've heard from certain principals that teachers are leaving because they can make more money in other districts because they've been working here longer. So I don't necessarily think that some of our teachers are, I guess, happy with the decision of the 0 to 5 years versus the 6 to 20 to 21 plus years. And as a board member, I need to make sure that I'm advocating for those concerns that they bring forward. Because even though we have the 794 in the 0 to 5 years, if you look to the other ones, the 237, we're losing those good teachers. And those teachers are the ones that will go to the ones that are 0 to 5 and help them. If they need help, if they're having a struggling day, they're the teachers that have experience. And I think that we need to make sure that we're keeping them too. We know that they're valued so that they can be role models for those new teachers coming in. So that's kind of my comment. But with respect to the other funds that we got from the state, the capital, the M&O, you mentioned the bond and some of those pieces in the bond being in those other funds coming in. So I guess kind of, can you walk through, have we looked at the M&O capital, safety, buses, all those pieces that were kind of in the bond? Is there kind of discussion on those with those funds coming through?
Thank you, President Sandoval. Mrs. Rooks, I'll address your first question. I should note, and I've shared before, we have representation for both PPA and CTA for our teachers groups. And concerns from our certified classroom teachers come through the budget team. So there are conversations regarding compression and competition from other districts. We've shared before some of that competition comes from a 15% override compared to a 13%. It's a $4.5 million a year delta. What we've done, and we've been very intentional, I'll go back to the at-a-glance slide showing progress over time where those longer-term employees where they may have been frozen or not seen compensation increases. And I should note, a lot of this is possible due to the restoration of inflation funding and increased funding from the state of Arizona, the 20 by 20 from the governor's office. All of that has provided the foundation for these compensation increases. But we've been intentional attracting or addressing all of our employee groups. You'll note over the last couple of years, be it the increase based on longevity or the increase last year that was two-part with the additional funding that equated to in excess of 7% for the returning certified classroom teachers. We're trying to ensure those long-time employees are a focus, that they're prioritized. And again, with the recommendation tonight, we're coming back saying here's an opportunity to have an increase to the base, which is so important because then future compensation increases compound on that base increase. And so, yes, your comments are echoed at our budget team meetings. And it was actually 10 meetings with the additional May 26th meeting, thoughtful conversation, and the recommendation is brought forward believing it benefits the largest population of employees, including those long-term compressed employees. Now, in regard to the capital funding, the additional 1.7 and the 9.5 million one-time money, I have to be careful with the agenda item. This isn't a revisit of the bond projects, but what we will be doing on June 22nd is proposing our fiscal year 2024 budget. We're going to have a detailed presentation showing some of those capital initiatives. I've said many times we are funding not out of this new money, but existing capital. We had already prioritized security cameras, bait sensors, elementary front office remodels. So what this 9.5 and 1.7 in combination allows us to do is look at additional critical priority essential projects where it may be roofing or HVAC, those types of priority essential, as well as other areas. We're not right now looking at technology or transportation with this new money, security or priority and essential facility maintenance projects, as well as what options do we have to use some of this funding when we look at new construction of an elementary building at Liberty High School to address the enrollment challenges we have as far as having more students than space at that school. So that's what that initial conversation on the 22nd, you're going to see a detailed walkthrough of our capital initiatives for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ricks. Mrs. Ewing?
So I think we have to be, well, first of all, thank you to the committee for all of this. Thank you to your department for all of the time put forward to this. And thank you for always finding ways to show our employees that they're valuable. And I think you have to be very careful, which I feel like you have been, but very careful when you're looking at raises to make sure that you're not implying one group is more valuable over another. And I would echo Dr. Sorens's discussion about how much time our principals spend at our schools and how valuable they are. And they do some wonderful things with our schools, and some of those schools have 2,500 students there. So it's really an important job that they do. And so I just want to make sure that those employees do know that they're valued. And then some of the other ways that we can offer value to our employees is to make sure that we're having a good working environment and that employees know that they are supported. So again, I appreciate, and part of that is employees knowing that they have a say and a voice in the district and in decisions that are being made that directly are impacting them. So I appreciate that all these individuals are able to have a voice and the transparency of the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Thank you, Mrs. Myers. And again, always a lot of great work, and not only from you and your team, but all the individuals involved from our orgs and our teachers and staff, and making sure that we do have a diverse lens always at the table, representing all the associates throughout our district. So I appreciate that. That said, I mean, it's for me, I know we're on a good trajectory, to continue to prioritize people. And whenever we have the opportunity to do so, we always do, right? Dr. Sorensen mentioned just the achievements, the accolades, the awards, and just how highly decorated our business services team is, and it has always been since I've been on the board, through third-party auditors, auditor general, et cetera. I mean, it's again, it's clear that not only are you intentional and thoughtful around prioritizing people, but also very intentional and thoughtful in ensuring that all that we do as a district is done in line with financial governance, if you will. That said, it's been brought up a few times, and I'll bring it up again. I mean, this is what you're proposing here is, I think it's absolutely the right direction to go in. When you take a look at our district, I've said it before and it's been said, it takes a village, right? And I know everybody from administration to all employee groups, have dug in to help one another to make sure that our number one priority, meaning our most valuable assets, right, our youth, are put in positions to be successful, throughout our district. So that said, I will continue to advocate for those individuals who, are in that, I'm going to call it the classification or code, the 2200, our instructional leaders, even our secretaries. There may have been an opportunity. I don't know. I'm sure there are other aspects or variables or dynamics that have to be overcome to take a look at those positions and the additional monies that came in to lift them up a little bit in light of the fact that they're not able to take advantage of the classroom site fund dollars, right? Go ahead.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board. That is correct. They do not qualify. However, for those employees who did receive performance pay in that function group through 2019, we do provide them the equivalent from M&O, and that team, as part of the action that was taken on May 11th, their performance pay did increase from 2,800, I believe, to 35. So we did acknowledge that group as well. But yes, the budget team did talk about 2,200 as being a priority out of the gate, right when we come back next year, and our secretaries as well. We've had many conversations, and we hear many voices that all of our secretarial groups need to be looked at. So Function 2200 is a priority, and that was the asterisk with our meeting on May 26th. That group needs to be top of mind priority with the discussion for next year.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think, another group, and I believe Ms. Rooks might have alluded to this group. I mean, even our employees that come back off of ESI, I mean, again, very proud and happy that we're, moving them to that 90%, of their most recent salary as they come back. But, you take a look at individuals who just came off ESI, maybe within the last year, right, who aren't able to take advantage of that 90%, how we lift them up, and make sure that, they feel valued as well. Because absolutely, they add a lot of value across the district, not only from a mentorship perspective with our younger teachers, but, their willingness to continue to come back and serve this district, really serve our students and their families in a way that they deserve is just invaluable. But I'll say overall, just very inspired and pleased that this district, your team, that office, continues to always be very mindful and lead with others in mind. And the decisions that you make are around people, and we create, inspiring, motivating work environments for our associates. That equals to a very inspiring and motivating, classroom for our students. So I appreciate all the work that you continue to do and all your diligence, due diligence, and the detail. So thank you for that.
Thank you, President Sandoval. And we couldn't do this without Mrs. Vesley and our human resources team. Mrs. Vesley co-facilitates the budget team with me, and she's invaluable to the process. So I just want to say thank you again for your partnership and all of the work our Human Resources Department does alongside Business Services, so thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Ms. Vesley. Thank you as well.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sandoval. I guess I would just want to advocate here, and I asked you if you want to be involved, you can be involved. If you're a staff member in this district and you are unhappy with the decisions made in that committee, would you advise them the best way to create change that you want to see is be involved in that committee and have a voice at the table at those 9 meetings?
President Sandoval, members of the governing board, we have shared that type of recommendation in years past when people reach out, and I can tell you when we do get emails, I know the governing board receives emails, Mrs. Vesley or I or the other appropriate staff member, whoever is truly that department or that area, we respond, and oftentimes the recommendation is, would you like to learn more about the process? Would you like to have an in-person meeting? Would you like to participate in the budget team?
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Ricks.
Yep, I was just going to say I'll definitely reach out to all those individuals and let them know.
Thank you again, Ms. Myers. All right, that said, board members, no further questions, comments. Do need a motion to approve revised compensation increases to the base for eligible employees in the 2023-2024 fiscal year, ranging from 4% 4.5%, and 5% based on the employee's consecutive years of service. I'll move that we approve 10.3, the revised compensation increase.
I will second.
Ms. Contra, we have a motion made by myself, a second by Mrs. Ewing. Board members, please cast your votes. All right, motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Thank you, President Sandoval.
All right, so moving on to 10.4, results-based funding certified teacher and site administrator stipends. Ms. Myers, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the governing board. Dr. Reynolds, thank you for the opportunity to present information regarding the district's fiscal year 2023 results-based funding payments. Go back to 2018, and at that time, House Bill 2749, Section 25 authorized results-based funding payments to school districts for fiscal year 2018. Arizona Revised Statute 15-249.08 provides guidance on the use of those funds, and the Arizona Department of Education administers the annual appropriations, which are payments that are made to qualifying schools, not individuals, but schools based on student assessment test scores. The resulting payments to school districts are 2 years in arrears. So 2 years after the test score is earned, the payment is made to the qualifying school districts. And those payments take place in December and the May-June timeframe. Arizona Revised Statutes require that a majority of the monies received by a school district shall be used at the school that earned the test results for teacher salaries, to hire teachers, for school leader salaries, for classroom supplies, and for other strategies that sustain the outcomes for students at that school. A portion of the monies received by a school district may also be used for expanding and replicating that school site as a quality school model by adding additional seats and serving more students at the awarded school site. A portion of the funding may also be used to mentor school leaders and teachers from other school sites and to physically expand the results-based funding model or strategies at other school locations to improve academic outcomes and to accelerate academic growth. So that's the background of results-based funding that we've shared in the past with the governing board, and I'll qualify that through fiscal year 2023 because there's a change, of course. And so with that, for fiscal 23, we had 14 schools that qualified for results-based funding payments based on school year 2021 assessment scores. The total payment for the year is $2,192,171. It's important to note that this is the last year. In fact, during the 2023 legislative session, Laws 23, Chapter 142, Section 2 repealed Arizona Revised Statute 15-249.08. Now, the repeal does not affect any results-based funding dollars that have been received through fiscal year 2023, so those dollars are not going to be swept. It's simply not going to be in place in the future. So I want to acknowledge this is the last year that we'll be bringing forward recommendations related to new funding from results-based funding and test assessment scores. State statute has allowed the district to historically use our annual results-based funding dollars for teacher and school leader salaries to sustain outcomes for students at the schools that had the eligible test scores. And so for fiscal year 2023, we are recommending a stipend amount that is $1,300 for non-title school staff and $2,100 for title school certified teaching staff and site administrators. That's permissible under statute. It's the same amount that we had in fiscal year 2021. So we're bringing forward the same recommendation for the qualifying schools, that staff who were at the school the year that the test score was earned and who are still with the district this school year would be eligible for that payment. So that is our first recommendation regarding the funding. In addition, in the past, the district has also recommended that after the stipend payment to eligible staff, 25% of the remaining funds would be used for expanding and replicating the awarded school site as a quality school model district-wide, and then 75% would remain at the school that was awarded to sustain student outcomes at that school. And so that's been our percentage that we've used throughout the last 5+ years with results-based funding, and we're continuing with that recommendation with a split of 75-25. And of course, the remaining dollars after the stipend, the estimate for those remaining dollars are listed on the slide. And so with that, that concludes the presentation. Administration is available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
Well, I think it's fantastic that we have some schools that actually are going to be able to utilize these funds due to how well they have done with, their testing. It's interesting to me, though, on slide 4, I noticed that they're all elementary schools with the exception of the Peoria Traditional School. So that's the only high school that's listed that actually made the cut. So I find that very telling, that our high schools are kind of falling short. And the elementary schools are, seem to be improving and, narrowing down the deficiency that we have. But the only one that's listed is the Peoria Traditional.
Peoria Traditional is an elementary school.
Is it? Oh, so we don't have any high school? I thought that was.
No, and just to.
I was thinking Peoria
right.
High School in my head.
No. Yeah.
Well, shoot. Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
I
really
revised.
challenging for, under the current model, well, I guess the model that's going
Yes.
away, for high schools to earn that results-based funding.
Yes, okay, well then, I guess there are no high schools then that are listed, so that's extremely unfortunate. So that's something we're gonna have to really look at. So I find that, like I said, it's very telling. I'm proud of the schools that have actually made some advances, but it's something we really need to look at, that the high schools are falling short, and those are the kids that are gonna be graduating soon, that are gonna go out into the world, and they're not prepared. So that's something we really have to look closely at. Let's see, I think on the 6th slide, I love the concept of trying to duplicate or replicate what is working and try to duplicate that concept and those initiatives in other schools. I think that's a great idea. See what's working and implement it elsewhere. So I think that's a fantastic idea. We should do that in the high schools. So this is fantastic. I think it's great, and I'm proud of the schools that made the cut, and we just need to get some high schools listed there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Dr. Sorensen.
It's challenging sometimes when people use these kinds of measures as an indicator of school performance, because oftentimes state tests measure proficiency, and students at different schools come in at different levels of proficiency. So often you see socioeconomic status and proficiency scores align. Teaching, we are in the business of learning. And I would just repeat something I said before. To quantify the amount of learning is super challenging. Otherwise, we'd already have the algorithm and you could just plug these things in and get an output. And teaching is growth, right? And there are, at some point in time, there were different models to measure growth. So I would just caution anyone to use these end results as a measure of school performance when we don't even know what the model is. I mean, I don't know how high schools were evaluated. I don't know how elementary schools were evaluated. I don't know that well enough to comment that I think this is a good idea. But it's going away anyway, so we won't talk about it again. But until our state gives us a valid and reliable way to measure student growth from point A to point B, this is going to be very challenging. So I would just caution anyone to look at this as a black and white measure of how schools operate. Thank you for the information.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Rooks?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I guess I wrote down the one that you kind of mentioned, the current model. What is the current model then? Since it seems like we don't know what it is. So I guess what is the current model for the elementary schools versus the high schools? How does that work?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, members of the governing board, I will look to Dr. Hernandez. That's more of an academic question. It's detailed in statute. I don't have the full statute on the slide. And Mr. Moss, if he were here, would be able to speak in depth to how those calculations work and how the test scores are included in the formula. So I would defer to our academic services team. What I would recommend, we can certainly provide in a Friday report exactly what that looked like, but I'd like to defer to the experts in that area, which is our research and development and academic services area.
Yeah, absolutely. We can have Mr. Moss provide that. It's
perfect.
That's fine. Yeah, sorry, just wanted to
that's
ask a
okay.
question. So I did actually, the schools that were listed, I did look up their scores from that year with their assessments, the minimally and partially proficient. So that's why I was kind of asking, how do we determine it? Because some of the scores, you know, I know Dr. Sorensen, you don't like the way that it's measured, but I would like to make sure that we are making sure that the kids understand what they're learning and they're understanding the concepts and that they are going to be able to get an education. I mean, this is math and ELA. Like, these are important things that they will need in the future. But I did want to ask the slide that's up, the 75%, the 25%. What does that look like? Do we have an estimate, or not an estimate, do we have an idea of what we're doing with those funds? When you say you want to replicate that specific school site, what does that look like?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Hernandez to provide you with the response, but what I will say is, from a budget perspective, the school 75% is managed at a school level within the framework of the statute, providing guidance on sustaining, hiring, staff, teacher, school leader salaries, professional development supplies, so that is managed at a school level. But Dr. Hernandez, do you want to add anything at the district level?
Certainly. Good evening, President Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks. One example that we're working with right now is focusing on our schools who have demonstrated increases in proficiency and growth with students with disabilities, and looking at the practices and the procedures they've had in place that have gained those changes, and then looking to replicate that in schools who have lesser success with students with disabilities.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. You stated the 75% goes to the individual school. I did see the statute. It's for teacher hire, teacher pay, professional development, I think is what was on the slide. Is that, I guess, if the idea of the school itself is short one teacher in a specific grade, is that something that they can utilize these funds to look to hire another teacher for that grade level?
Within President Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, members of the governing board, within the statute, there's a supplement versus supplant requirement, so you can't use these dollars to replace monies that you would already be spending. It's to add on to expand something new.
Okay, all right. With the stipends, where it has teaching staff and the site administrators, who falls into that category for teaching staff at that specific school, and then site administrators?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, members of the governing board, teaching staff is a certified teacher, function 1000. Administrative staff is the principal, assistant principal, etc.
Okay, so basically all of the teachers at the school will receive this stipend, correct?
Function 1000, yes.
Okay, all right. Those are the only questions I had.
Now, I want to qualify that teacher had to be at the school the year the test score was earned. So not someone who's just come on. The motion will read at the school the year the test score was earned, and were also with us this year as an employee. So they couldn't have been there 2 years ago and then left last year. So there are a couple of criteria that have to be met.
Okay, all right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
So just because the conversation's been brought up about how do we evaluate how students are doing and the growth and so forth. So I am very I'm very happy that these schools, even though the way that the schools are evaluated isn't necessarily a good, or rather the ones that didn't get it, maybe it's not necessarily a reflection of how the students are doing. But I do commend the staff that have put forth the effort for these schools to be eligible for this. I did want to note that all of our schools have now gone to measuring student growth, looking at how students are doing, and really tracking, are they moving up, are they moving down, what things are being done with those students to really improve them and bring them to the next level, and that all of our schools are now. And that's one of the things they're doing this summer, is examining that data to start to really look at what are the best practices and what can we be doing more of. So I'm really excited to hear from the schools on how that's all going. When I went out to the sites, I've actually walked into their data room, and they've been able to talk to me about various different students and how they're moving up or what they're doing with them and so forth. So I do appreciate that. So that's kind of all. That's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Thank you, board members. Ms. Myers, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's, Peoria Unified, we're a public school district and we're open to everyone. And, like I said earlier, each one of our students has a story. I mean, it's, whether it's you're highly performing or, to Dr. Sorensen's point, from a lower socioeconomic, status to, again, trauma and students, with special needs and our beginning eventually, again, foster students. So, again, there's a lot of great things that go on throughout our district. And for me, it's just the hearts and the intentionality and the focus of our teachers. When a student, falls, they pick them up and say, try again. And I thank them all for that. So a lot of great work. Thank you again for a very complete, short, one of your shorter ones, but nonetheless, a very complete presentation. So thank you for that. All right, if no further questions, comments.
I do have one comment.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Rooks had mentioned something maybe where we different. I think we're actually kind of aligned in a focus on those minimally and partially proficient bands. How many of those kids can we move, and how do we identify those students? You know what I mean? Because we may have partial students that move from minimally to partial. And my statement was not one of a lack of accountability. And it's pretty opportune time that Mr. Nuttall's in the room, along with Dr. Hernandez, is creating measures as a district to get accurate information for how our schools are doing. So it was not a statement of a lack of accountability. We need to do that because the state has failed to do that. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Sorensen, for that clarity. All right, that said, I do need a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 results-based funding, certified teacher and site administrator stipends to eligible staff who were at RBF schools the year the qualifying test was administered and who were employed by the district during fiscal year 2023, which is the year the funds were received. I'll move that we approve 10.4, the results-based funding, certified teacher and site administrator stipends.
I will second.
Ms. Concho, we have a motion made by myself, a second by Mrs. Ewing. Board members, please cast your votes. And motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Ms. Myers, thank you.
Thank you. I'll say good evening
You're
again.
staying
That's
with
why
us.
they're
I
getting
take it.
shorter,
All right.
because I have 3.
All right, moving on to 10.5, discussion and consideration of course fees. non-class fees, Kid Zone, and preschool fees for the 2023-2024 school year. Ms. Myers, welcome back.
Good evening again. President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds. Tonight I'll provide information and recommendations regarding fees for the fiscal year, the upcoming new fiscal year 2024. Attached to this agenda item are fee schedules related to course fees, extracurricular and program fees, food service fees, rental, advertising, and athletic fees. As part of the presentation tonight, I'll share information in general regarding fees and recommendations for next year. And of course, I've shared before, policy governs our ability to charge a fee. It's policy JQEA, and that policy allows the district to charge fees for extracurricular activities, community education programs, course fees at the high school for specific classes as well. Extracurricular activities are school-sponsored optional activities that may require an enrolled student to pay a fee. They're non-credit in general, and they supplement the educational program that the student is attending and are detailed in Arizona Revised Statute 15-342. A fee is an amount paid directly to Peoria Unified to support extracurricular activities, no longer required for tax credit. However, if a fee is charged, it cannot exceed the actual cost that the district is incurring. And of course, each year the governing board is asked to authorize principals and schools to waive a fee for a student in the case of a hardship. So you'll know, we'll kind of start walking through some of the changes for next year. In the area of high school class fees, there are changes with CTE, science, and mathematics. You'll see on this slide where there has been a review of the fees in place, and it has been determined that the fees highlighted on this slide can be deleted for the new school year. There were also there was a review of a number of science-related fees that will no longer be needed, and the reason for that suspension next year, so it's a one-year suspension right now, is, as you know, we have our science textbook adoption that is underway, so we're highlighting where these fees will not be charged next year. They're not being deleted, but they're on hold at a minimum for one school year. For fiscal year 2024, the majority of non-class fees have remained unchanged from the current year. I have examples listed on this slide, and of course attached to this agenda item in detail are all of the fee schedules, high school class fee, non-class fees, as well as athletics, rental, community preschool, and the like. So I'm just highlighting some of the fees. Again, the majority have not changed. Where there were some changes with non-class fees are in the area of gym locker padlocks, as well as a fee for damaged technology, the ability for extracurricular programs to charge a higher amount for trophies and awards. There's also an increase for the daily rate for COOP programming at our high schools, going from $28 to $30 a day. A high school lost or damaged calculator fee has been added to the schedule, as well as an update to add verbiage notating that if there is damage to school district property, that the district can charge a fee up to the actual cost of the damaged property. In the area of athletics and marching band and related extracurricular activities, there will be no recommended changes for participation fees for next year. So we're excited to highlight that. The same is the case in the area of food service. There are no recommended fee increases for next year, as is the case for athletic events. Last year, you'll recall we had some modifications with our gate admission fees, and this year they're the same amount, no increase. We continue to move forward with our digital ticket purchases, so that will continue. And if there is an athletic pass that's purchased, again this year, that will actually result in a reduced processing fee. In the area of community preschool, that includes Kids Zone, as well as community camps and competitions. The fees for Kids Zone and community preschool have been updated by the respective departments and are included in this presentation. Those fees do change each year, so they are included. And then with facility rentals, no change to our facility rental fee schedule, with the exception that our lifeguards are now charged at $15 an hour plus benefits. And as part of the district's strategic plan, community connectedness, the perspective in the strategic plan for that area, we're excited to share that the district is launching an education-focused community magazine with in-depth storytelling on how our students are impacting the community. So you'll see tonight for the first time we have an advertising fee schedule that will allow the district to seek advertisers in alignment with Peoria Unified's advertising policy, KHB and KHB-R. And I know Mrs. Airy included background information for the governing board in a recent Friday report on this new endeavor. And so with that, administration is recommending that the governing board approve the proposed course fees, program fees, extracurricular activity fees, and related district fees for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. That concludes the presentation. Administration's available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. Board members, questions and comments? Dr. Sorensen?
I apologize if you may have already told us this, but could we get something in our Friday report regarding which one of these fees are tax credit eligible? Like if my kid loses a calculator, can I use my tax credit to pay for that $55? So that way we could get that information out there.
President Sandoval, Dr. Sorensen, members of the governing board, participation fees are tax credit eligible. Some of these other fees, locker fees, lost calculator fee, are not, but we can certainly provide information in an upcoming Friday report, as well as we do have information on the district's website with links to the Arizona Department of Revenue and publications that help guide our community, but I'm happy to include that.
That'd be great. I know they won't all be, but if there's any at all, right? Because we know fees are changing across pretty much every entity just because of what's going on economically. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, I would keep that in your mind, so when we get to the end of the meeting, Dr. Sorensen, you can request that formally so we can make sure that gets on that Friday report. Thank you. Ms. Hill, questions and comments on that? All right. Mrs. Ricks?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Ewing?
I've already shared this with Mrs. Airy. I'm super excited about the publication, so I'm excited about that. If you can just clarify, give a little bit more explanation on the fees that are on hold. I don't know which slide number that was. Just if you can explain that a little bit further. You said because we're in the process of the textbook adoption.
Dr. Hernandez,
Yeah,
you
I
want
was just
to
going
address that?
I was going to just
Thank
say
you.
Dr. Hernandez is the best person. Thank you.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, because of the nature of a comprehensive K-12 science and math adoption, we are confident that we will be providing all of the materials from textbooks to workbooks to manipulatives for math to kits for science for the next 6 years, that we do not need to assess a fee specifically for the next school year. So we want to just put it on pause because, as you know, the adoption and the ordering is very fresh right now, and it's something in progress.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Myers, as always, thank you. Yeah, I too am very excited about the education publication. I think it's going to be a great augmentation or supplement supporting, I guess, communication effort, on top of what we do with regard to PSBN and all the other channels that we have out there. So great work. Thank you for that. All right, any further questions, comments in this line item? All right, that said, I do need a motion to approve the course fees, non-class fees, kid zone fees, community preschool fees, facility rentals, and related miscellaneous charges and fees for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
I will motion to approve the course fees, non-class fees, kid zone fees, community preschool fees, facility rentals, and related miscellaneous charges and fees for the 2023-2024 year as presented.
I will second.
Ms. Contra, I have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Rooks. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Mrs. Myers, thank you. All right, moving on to 10.6, consideration of action regarding personnel matters as discussed in executive session, including possible adoption of statement of charges. and issuance of notice of intention to dismiss Peoria Unified School District employee Mr. Tamim Whaley pursuant to ARS 15-539. Board members, any questions, comments? Any further questions or comments? Okay. That said, I move that the governing board adopt the statement of charges and issue to Tamim Whaley a notice of intention to dismiss him, and that if Tamim Whaley does not timely request a hearing in accordance with Arizona law, then Tamim Whaley is dismissed at the expiration of the time set forth in Arizona law with no further action of the governing board.
I will second that.
Ms. Contra, I have a motion made by myself and a second by Mrs. Ewing. Board members, please cast your votes.
President Sandoval, I'll need just a moment to get that entire motion typed in, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I ask for the motion and the second again, please?
Ms. Contra, I'm sorry? Yep. And Ms. Ewing? All right, board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to 10.7, consideration of action to appoint a hearing officer if Mr. Tamim Whaley requests a hearing on the statement of charges and notice of intention to dismiss. Any questions, comments? Good. All right. That said, I move that if Tamim Whaley requests a hearing on the statement of charges and notice of intention to dismiss, that the governing board appoint a hearing officer to hold the hearing, hear the evidence, prepare a record, and issue a recommendation to the governing board for action. If the administration and Tamim Whaley agree on a hearing officer, then I move that we appoint that person with no further action of the governing board. If the administration and Tamim Whaley are unable to agree on a hearing officer, then I move that the board appoint the hearing officer from the list provided by the Arizona Department of Education as follows. Number 1, Ben Hufford. 2, Harold Murkow. Number 3, Mr. Ernest Calderon.
I will second.
Ms. Contra, I have a motion made by myself and a second by Mrs. Rooks. I'll give you time to type that in.
Thank you, sir. President Sandoval,
Yes, ma'am.
I am ready.
All set?
Yes, sir.
All right, board members, please cast your votes.
I apologize, sir. I need the first
Oh,
and the
sorry.
second.
So I motioned and Mrs. Rooks second. There's a minor typo in the motion. Okay, sounds good. All right, board
Thank
members,
you.
feel confident in casting your vote. Thank you. All right, motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Especially, thank you. All right, moving on to Section 11, discussion items. We don't have any this evening. Section 12, informational reports, report on upcoming meetings and events. Ms. Airy.
President Sandoval, members of the board, no additional events to share with you this evening.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, 12.2, legislative, state, and local updates. Ms. Myers.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board. I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. All right, 12.3, budget, facilities, planning, and construction report. These reports are on our website for your viewing at your convenience. 12.4, district enrollment reports for the month of April 2023, also on our website. Section 13, other business. 13.1, board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. Ms. Hill, any items that you would like to readdress this evening?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Mrs. Rooks?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Ewing?
No, thank you.
I don't have any either. Thank you. 13.2, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Ms. Hill?
Yes, actually, I asked for this a couple of meetings ago, but I guess I wanted to ask for it again just to make sure we can get it on a agenda for the future. Previously, I'd asked for the possibility of having equivalency testing starting for basically would be the class of 2035 for English and math. So basically, they'd get an equivalency test for English and math for first grade, and then first grade, second grade, first grade, second grade, third grade. That seemed appropriate to me, and then we can obviously then, address any issues right at that moment if some children are not ready to move on.
That's on the list. Okay, perfect. All right. All right, thank you. Dr. Sorensen?
Yeah, just to formally request in a Friday report which one of those fees are tax credit eligible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see a report on the schools that have requested teachers for certain grades that are needed. If there's extra positions that are open and schools are requesting that, if there's a number to kind of see what we're heading into the new school year, just Friday report is fine.
Clear on that, Dr. Reynolds? Okay. I'll second that.
And then I guess I still would like to have the bathroom privacy policy. We already kind of asked for that at a previous board meeting, but just reiterate that. And then also the multi-tiered system of support. I guess that's a software program that we're going to be using this coming fall. So I know I've asked for it before, but I would like to kind of hopefully be able to have discussion before Dr. Davidson leaves and you, just so we can get the information. And then if it ties into the form that I brought to your attention, that enrollment packet form, that I think there was somebody that spoke about it. So just kind of those two things, if they correlate, and having a discussion on them.
Okay. So if you can separate the two, what was the first one?
The multi-tiered system of support software program.
Okay.
I think I've already asked for it.
Yeah,
I just
it's on
said-
yep.
It's on the list. Okay.
And then the enrollment packet, a form that was in the enrollment packet, I've not seen it previously. It's asking for parents to release have the district be able to access medical records, psychological records. There was some information on there about a third-party vendor, so just kind of some clarification on what that is and why we are needing that information as a school district.
And we're putting that information together. If it's okay, Friday, we can do that in a Friday report for the whole board.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect.
All right, just to formalize that, I'll second that last request.
Thank you.
Got it.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. Ewing?
I don't have any other requests.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Myers, I'm going to probably refer to you on this because I know Mr. Ernster isn't here, but is there a way to get a Friday report on when the last time was that we took a look at our site AD budgets, right, across our high schools, just to understand how long we've looked at them to make sure that they're still relevant? Does that make sense?
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the board. I think you may be asking for the amounts that our high schools receive each year for M&O and capital and how that's managed at a site level and allocated, and dollar amounts that might be for extracurricular or athletics.
Specific to athletics, correct.
Yeah, I can certainly include that in a Friday report.
Awesome.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Myers. Thank you, Ms. Rooks. All right, board members, moving on to 14, adjournments. I do need a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:15 p.m.
I move to adjourn.
I will second.
All right, Ms. Concha, we have a motion by Mrs. Hill and a second by Mrs. Ewing to adjourn this meeting at 8:15 p.m. Board members, please cast your votes. All right, motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, community, teachers, staff, chiefs. Have a great evening.